something. To prove that you're enough, you have to prove that you're pretty enough, you have to prove that you're smart enough.
But I obviously knew that they would end up in LA because that was Meghan's dream. Her dream was to be an A-lister, and she was unable to make it to those A-list parties.
And I think that Americans were split 50-50 maybe a couple of months ago when it came to Harry and Meghan. But the problem is that they can't close their mouths and they just keep talking, and it seems more and more petty.
Candace Owens didn't just come for Meghan Markle. She practically bulldozed her public image with a verbal flamethrower and left nothing but ashes behind because Meghan's latest stunt at playing the relatable royal just face-planted harder than her $20 million podcast disaster. Candace wasn't just calling her out, she went full demolition mode, tearing through Meghan's crocodile tears and fairy tale trauma like a truth-seeking missile. Meghan's painfully awkward sit-down with 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐸 now holds a special place in the cringe hall of shame. And guess who's giving the guided tour straight to disaster land? Yep, it's Candace Owens with a megaphone pointing out every fake sob story and emotional landmine Meghan tried to pass off as authentic vulnerability.
And she's been a social climber from the beginning. She married somebody the first time to socially climb. And for her, Harry was just an entry ticket into all of those circles.
The second Meghan tried to pull the "I'm just being myself" card, Candace Owens lit her up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. With zero hesitation and maximum fire, Candace delivered that signature mix of sharp wit and brutal precision, saying Meghan suffers from a rare condition, being completely incapable of acting like a normal human being. And she didn't stop there. She called Meghan a malignant narcissist and flat out labeled her a truly terrible person. And the internet winced, but also kind of nodded, because where's the lie? Meghan showed up to her chat with 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐸𝐸, promising the real deal, raw emotions, no glam, no script, just her truth. But what the audience got felt like a performance written by a PR intern. Her voice trembled just enough to seem fragile, her sniffles hit like clockwork, and yet somehow not a single tear dared to fall. Where's the tear? Asked half of Twitter as screenshots flooded the timeline and slow motion replays exposed the act. People weren't moved, they were skeptical. It didn't feel like vulnerability, it felt like a casting audition.
I don't care at all for the Harry and Meghan thing, except for the political undertones of somebody saying, I'm not liked, therefore it's because I'm 25% black.
Candace Owens didn't hold back. She summed up the entire ordeal in 3 perfect words: make it end. And honestly, she just voiced what half the internet was already screaming into their phones. The whole interview felt like a mockumentary that forgot it wasn't supposed to be funny. Meghan tearfully read out a letter allegedly written to her kids, and then threw in a line that felt like a parody of sincerity, saying, "This is why it's so nice to not have makeup on," as if anyone was buying that act. Her hair was freshly blown out, her skin was flawless, and everything was camera ready. Even one critic pointed out she wasn't makeup free, she just didn't wear eyeshadow, and that's not vulnerability, that's brand strategy. What Candace saw wasn't bravery, it was the Meghan Markle formula in full swing: victimhood plus press coverage plus well-timed crocodile tears equals public sympathy and trending hashtags. But here's the kicker, it's all starting to fall apart. Candace said it straight, you're never gonna convince anyone you're authentic, and the receipts are stacking up, because this is the same Meghan who once claimed she was in the trenches while living in a royal palace, surrounded by couture gowns, private chefs, and staff trained to bow on cue. She painted a palace like a prison and expected applause. And Candace Owens, she's not clapping anymore. Neither is the public. The performance is cracking, and more people are seeing through the act, calling her what she really is: a grifter with a script and a spotlight. Candace didn't sugarcoat it. Fake it till you make it, she said. The Brits are on to you, America's onto you, the world is onto you. This podcast episode was supposed to be a rebrand Meghan 2.0, raw, vulnerable, and stripped down. But what people got was pure Hollywood gloss wrapped in fake tears and airbrushed pain. Even Candace admitted she's trying to find something to like, but it's getting impossible. Even Meghan's most emotional moment reading that letter was dissected and dismissed, because still, no tears, just a shaky voice and pause button dramatics. And when Meghan said she loves being busy, people online exploded with disbelief. Her foundation's own tax filings show she reportedly works 1 hour a week, and somehow she's selling us the image of a hustle queen juggling captions, photo shoots, friendship, and motherhood from a multi-million-dollar mansion. Candace clapped back hard, mocking her grueling workload of curating Instagram aesthetics while sipping green juice in luxury. And Candace isn't alone. Megyn Kelly ripped in just as hard, calling her another malignant narcissist chasing attention, while Fox's Maureen Callahan said Meghan keeps trying to sell relatability, like it's a luxury brand, but no one's buying because her version of struggle doesn't look real. It looks like something you'd find on a mood board, over-designed, overacted, and officially over it.
Spotify lost so much money on them, and you remember one of the executives came out and said they quite literally have no talent, but worse than that,
even Meghan Markle's so-called entrepreneurial empire is starting to wobble like a poorly stacked house of PR cards. Spotify has already slammed the brakes on their multi-million-dollar deal, her Netflix projects are flopping harder than a bad reality pilot, and that much-hyped American Riviera Orchard brand? Still nowhere to be seen. Not a launch, no buzz, just silence. And Candace Owens wasn't about to let that slide. She went straight for the jugular, telling Meghan flat out, "You are not a successful female entrepreneur. You are shameless and exhausting." And just when you think it couldn't get more awkward, the podcast dynamic with 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐿𝐼 made things even worse. 𝐬𝐬𝐬 wasn't just interviewing Meghan, she was practically worshipping her, tossing compliments like they were party favors. "Are you more in love now than ever? How beautiful is your husband?" It didn't feel like journalism. It felt like a fan club meeting disguised as a podcast. Every sugary answer Meghan gave was met with wide-eyed approval. No pushback, no challenge, just a constant stream of praise. And the irony is that this PR parade made Meghan seem even less real, because how do you claim to be raw and relatable when everything around you is staged and sanitized? This is exactly what Candace Owens keeps calling out. Meghan wants the image of a grounded everyday woman, but she builds a reality filled with yes people and glossy photo ops. It's like every moment of her life is auditioning for a Hallmark special, and the public is done watching the infomercial for her brand of hardship. At the core of this mess lies one brutal, unavoidable question: can Meghan Markle ever seem real? Or has her image been so carefully engineered, so heavily polished, and so relentlessly calculated that even her vulnerability feels like a corporate strategy? Because when every emotional moment is perfectly timed, when every raw appearance is clearly rehearsed, and when even your so-called no makeup look feels like it required 3 stylists and a lighting crew, how can anyone believe a single word you say?
Throughout Meghan Markle's entire career, she never wanted people to know that she was black. She never wore that on her sleeve. She never spoke about her.
Candace Owens didn't just criticize Meghan Markle, she surgically dissected her performance line by line, gesture by gesture. And what she uncovered wasn't a woman in pain, it was a woman performing pain. Everything about Meghan's podcast appearance screamed calculated, from her carefully measured pauses to the quivering voice that always seemed to tremble on cue. And maybe that's the real headline here. Not that Meghan cried or opened up, but that once again it all felt like an episode of The Meghan Show, and Candace Owens was the first one bold enough to yell "cut." But it didn't stop there, because while Meghan was busy narrating her sob story like a fairy tale gone wrong, the internet went to work, and what they found didn't just poke holes in her narrative, it blew it wide open. Let's start with that handwritten letter to her kids, which she read on air with the same dramatic flair you'd expect from a Hallmark audition, every word dripping in emotion, every pause suspiciously perfect. She described writing it in the dead of night during some vague, emotionally difficult time, and immediately people online asked, wait a minute, difficult how? Because last anyone checked, Meghan and Harry were living large in a $14 million Montecito mansion, complete with staff security, endless privacy, and multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix, Spotify, and publishers. If that struggle, the rest of the world is drowning in misery. And that's where Candace pounced again, calling it exactly what it looked like. A script Meghan genuinely thinks people will swallow anything as long as it's whispered with just the right lighting and a cracked voice. And honestly, Candace isn't wrong, because this whole brand Meghan built is designed to feel effortless when it's clearly anything. But remember the so-called no makeup look? Critics were quick to zoom in flawless skin, subtle glow, perfect hair. It wasn't raw, it wasn't real, it was manufactured authenticity dressed up in emotional lighting. And that's the tragedy of it all, because for a split second, Meghan almost had it. She almost seemed human when she spoke about motherhood and balancing identity with family. For a fleeting moment, there was truth, but then boom, the crescendo hit, the voice cracked again, and suddenly she was ranting about the struggle of writing social media captions. And just like that, the whole illusion collapsed. That's the Meghan Markle effect. She tiptoes into relatability and then dives headfirst into self-pity and oversells every detail until the audience just checks out. And Candace knows this routine by heart. She's seen it play out like clockwork. Announce a project, play the victim, dominate headlines, Go quiet, rinse, and repeat, and each time the emotional manipulation gets a little more dramatic, a little more desperate. Candace didn't sugarcoat it, she called Meghan exhausting because every single public appearance is packaged like a comeback story, a redemption arc, a carefully written play for sympathy, and the world is starting to see through it. Redemption from what? Being too rich, too privileged. Even her own fans can't defend this latest act. YouTube's filled with reaction videos breaking down her every move. Fake eye wipes, dramatic sighs, voice cracks straight out of acting school. Meghan doesn't want to be queen anymore. She wants to be Oprah, but every time she talks, it feels like a scripted audition, not real emotion. Even her business image is collapsing. Deals are dying, the brand is fading, and people just aren't buying her version of struggle anymore. Candace Owens saw it first, now everyone does. The truth? Meghan isn't being attacked, she's being ignored. And in the world of celebrity, that's the final curtain call. Meghan Markle tried to rebrand herself as an entrepreneur on 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐸 podcast, hyping her American Riviera orchard like it's the next Goop. But here's the truth. No product, no store, just vague promises and a few jars of jam sent to celebrities. Meanwhile, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐿 built a $1 billion brand from scratch. One woman hustled, the other married a prince and still hasn't launched anything real. Candace Owens nailed it. Meghan wants success without the grind, applause without the hustle. And after Spotify dumped her, Meghan re-emerged not with her own platform, but as a guest on someone else's podcast. That's not queen energy, that's side character energy. The whole interview was a cheerleading session. No tough questions, just non-stop praise. It looked desperate because it was. Meghan's polished, rehearsed performance felt more like a paid promotion than a genuine conversation. Twitter called it out as a parody. Viewers noticed her crying scenes from different interviews were identical, scripted, not sincere. Even UK tabloids, usually harsh on her, had a field day. The US press joined in too. Meghan's brand isn't polarizing anymore. It's collapsing. The public once rooting for her now watches skeptically. Influencers like Candace Owens are speaking the truth. This wasn't vulnerability. It was a PR stunt gone wrong. Meghan's brand is overproduced, out of touch, and exhausting. She's turned every public moment into a performance, demanding admiration while serving recycled fairy tales. The culture's changed. Audiences want truth and grit, not glitter filters and staged tears. Behind the scenes, Netflix is tightening control after archetypes flop. Spotify deal, dead. American Riviera orchard, vaporware. The empire she claims to build is crumbling. The podcast buzzed briefly on Spotify charts, but crashed fast. Just therapy talk with no real substance. Meghan keeps acting like she's reinventing the wheel, as if motherhood and ambition are new struggles, or being biracial is a fresh story. But there's nothing new here, just recycled trauma and vague affirmations wrapped in PR gloss. People aren't cruel, they're tired of fake authenticity sold through 5 layers of coaching, tired of a privileged woman crying about hardship without specifics. Even her defenders are silent now. Meghan had everything: platform, story, goodwill, even Oprah's mic. But she chose to build a house of mirrors, reflecting only herself, and now those mirrors are cracking. The 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐿 podcast was meant to be Meghan's soft reset, her comeback on her own terms, but instead it revealed what she's been desperately trying to hide. The public isn't buying it anymore because the world has moved on. We're past the just believe her era. Now it's all about showing your work, your hustle, your product, your impact. Yet Meghan keeps showing up empty-handed. Meanwhile, those truly grinding aren't crying into microphones. They're launching brands, funding scholarships, running foundations. They don't talk resilience, they live it. Candace Owens drives this point home. She doesn't hate Meghan for being emotional or privileged. She hates the performance, the way Meghan wraps every move in a moral spotlight expecting applause. Vulnerability isn't a brand or marketing tactic to monetize through jam jars and soft interviews. It's supposed to be raw, uncomfortable, real. Meghan's version comes with perfect lighting and PR handlers, and that's why she keeps losing her audience. She wants to be Diana, Oprah, Michelle Obama, women who earned respect through hard work and consistency, even when cameras weren't rolling. Meghan only shows up when there's a lens, a mic, and a narrative she can control. So now the real question isn't, can Meghan Markle rebuild her image? It's, does she even know who she is without a camera pointed at her? Real healing doesn't come from podcasts or curated sob stories. It comes from silence, stepping back, doing the actual work, and letting that work speak louder than tears. But silence isn't Meghan's style. She thrives in the spotlight and feeds off it, which is the biggest irony for someone who claims the royal family silenced her, yet hasn't stopped talking since. problems. According to insiders, Meghan's team is now in full damage control, with PR reps working overtime to spin sympathetic headlines framing her vulnerability as a superpower and why women shouldn't be shamed for crying. A classic media pivot to feminism and empathy when the heat gets too intense, hoping people forget their original frustration. But people aren't forgetting, they're remembering everything. The Spotify fiasco, the Vanity Fair cover that never happened, the archetype's trademark drama, the royal wedding spectacle followed by a royal implosion, all being re-examined under a harsher light. As credibility unravels, red flags once dismissed as confetti now look like warnings. Even Hollywood elites who once surrounded her, Oprah, Serena Williams, Ellen, Tyler Perry, are pulling away, not publicly condemning her, but quietly disappearing. No reposts, no defenses, just silence. And in Hollywood, silence speaks louder than shade. Executives are taking notes, and brands are hesitant because no one wants to invest millions in a personality this polarizing. Meghan's image, once an asset, is now a liability. The media machine built around her, backed by billion-dollar platforms, stylists, a royal title, and a compelling story, has faltered. And instead of trending for achievements, she's trending for breakdowns. Even her most loyal fans are shifting from wholehearted support to cautious, "I love Meghan, but" statements. The but signaling a brand losing its most valuable currency, goodwill. Once the benefit of the doubt burns out, what remains? The harsh truth is no one at Netflix or Archewell wants to admit it publicly, but Meghan is at a crossroads. One path leads to reinvention through retreat, meaningful work, and authentic growth. The other, the one she's currently on, leads to overexposure, overreach, and eventual irrelevance. Her game of endless reinvention via curated trauma and glossy vulnerability has a shelf life, and that shelf is rotting. Meanwhile, the public has better options. Realer stories from people like Quinta Brunson, Rihanna, and Angelina Jolie, who built empires or legacies without begging for sympathy. Meghan hasn't made that leap because she's stuck in Act 1, trying to prove herself through pity. And pity is no legacy. It's not about denying her right to share pain, but when a brand hinges solely on pain, every project circles back to hardship. Every episode ends in sorrow. People start asking what else she stands for beyond survival. Audiences rally behind fighters and comebacks, but won't stay for reruns of the same script. They won't applaud a narrative that never evolves. Right now, Meghan is trapped in a loop from "they silenced me" to "I cried again," and maybe it's time the tears stop. Maybe it's time for action, strategy, and delivery instead of anecdotes, slogans, and distraction, because people don't follow stories. They follow substance. And substance is what Meghan has yet to show consistently. So while the podcast fades, Candace Owens moves on, and headlines cool, the question remains, was this Meghan's breaking point or just another performance in her never-ending show? The twist is no one saw coming. Meghan set out to control the narrative, but somewhere along the way became the narrative itself. And this time, the audience might not be clapping.